Hello, and welcome to this co-evolve webinar where we'll talk about ways to simplify your multi-vendor unified communications environment. My name is Kieran Roach. I'm the CTO of co-evolve and one of the co-founders of the business. Our presentation today will last for around 30 minutes, and we've left some time at the end for any questions you may have. You can submit questions through the webinar interface, and we'll collect those and answer them at the end. We'll also be recording today's presentation, and we will email everybody a link to the content after the event. To start, to provide a little bit of background about myself, my name is Kieran Roach. As I said, I'm one of the co-founders of the co-evolve business. I'm based in Chicago in the US. We've been with co-evolve business for about a year now, and we'll give some more background about co-evolve in a moment. Prior to co-evolve, the majority of my experience is in a variety of technical roles with a mix of network service providers. Spent some time as well with an IT strategy and consulting firm. And prior to that, worked with a software-defined networking and software vendor based out of Ireland and the UK. So really across those companies, worked with a range of technologies, but always with a focus on complex global networks for enterprises. And that means everything from the design of those networks all the way through to the layered services that sit across the top of those. So WAN optimization, network orchestration, application visibility, and increasingly over the past 5 years or so, have seen a very significant uptick in the interest for unified communications as a key aspect of those networks. And within that, video is a very important part of that to get right because of the impact that it has on these global networks. A few more background details on co-evolve itself. As I said, we're about a year old. Our target market is really quite a simple one. It's companies that have users that are distributed a long way from the global applications that they need to access. And we help those users and help those companies get the best out of the networks and the application environment that they're operating by everything from assessments of what they have today, pinpointing areas where those networks can be re-architected and improved to get better performance, all the way through to developing ongoing roadmaps and strategies for improving either specific pieces of those networks or indeed making large changes to those networks as a whole. And because of the geographical aspect of what we do, we tend to work on a very regular basis with a number of common industry verticals. So we see a lot of activity within the engineering, architecture, and construction sector. They're often in emerging markets, very challenging network locations, and are often the ones putting in the infrastructure in the first place, which means a whole new, unique set of network requirements as a result. But then also manufacturing, particularly again in emerging markets, oil, gas, natural resources. A lot of these sectors where we see users that are spread out across many different countries and have a range of demands associated with getting their applications to the performance levels that are needed or getting the most out of those networks that are in place at the moment. My other co-founder in the business is Tim Sullivan, who is the CEO of the business and based in Australia. And Chris Bregenboy, also based in Australia, is our chairman of the board and brings a lot of experience in the financial services industry and really has strengthened that aspect of our team. We have employees today in 4 countries across Australia, US, Singapore, and then Malaysia, where our co-evolve response center is located. And outside of that, we've got a very extensive network of consultants and contractors that we can draw upon on an on-demand basis to help address specific requirements that our clients have around the world. So really leveraging that network of contacts we've built up over about 15 years in the industry and can use that to help address particular technical or commercial requirements that we see in particular client projects. So the topic for today is around multi-vendor unified communications. And as we researched this topic and pulled out the data that we could find related to this topic, we found some interesting elements to it. And we've represented 2 of those in this chart. And on the left, you can see unified communications as a whole is a very interesting topic to global enterprises. But within that, the video aspect of unified communications is one of the top requirements. It's one of the first pieces of the puzzle that these enterprises set out to try to address as they build unified communication strategies. So you've got voice and video very closely tied there at the very top of those. And then all of the other pieces, whether it's presence, integration with business applications, call control from a software-defined device. They're all the bonus features that get layered in across the top, but having that core audio and video functionality right there from the very beginning is seen as a key aspect of the unified communication strategy. But on the right-hand side, you can see one of the problems that results from that, which is that it's actually quite hard to do this in a very well-integrated way. And more often than not, enterprises end up with a fragmented, non-integrated environment where they have to use multiple products from multiple vendors and then find a way to stitch all of that together to deliver the solution that is going to work for their end users. Now, that's not an ideal position to be in, and you can see from this Frost and Sullivan report a desire to get away from that environment more towards an integrated environment, which is the center set of data here in the chart. But traditionally, that has been quite a difficult thing to do in the unified communication space. What we see less of is the single vendor solutions, primarily because there are very few one-size-fits-all solutions in this industry. So the ideal solution for most enterprises is a multi-vendor solution where you're picking the best of breed to meet particular requirements, but at the back end have a very tight integration between all of those to deliver the quality and user experience that's expected. So the simplification of that environment is a really key aspect of what we'll talk about today. And when we get into conversations with enterprises around unified communications requirements and strategies, we tend to start with a list of common questions that really get to the core of what their requirements are, what they're having to support from a user perspective, and so on. And as we go through these with these enterprises, we gain a very good understanding of what's needed in those environments to deliver that high-quality solution. So we're starting with this understanding of what type of existing video endpoints are there. Understanding that existing estate, nobody wants to rip out everything and replace it with brand new equipment, and have very few businesses have the capex to even consider that. So gaining that understanding of what's in place at the moment is a really key aspect of building this type of UC strategy. Link we see as a very significant driver for the increased use of video in the enterprise. You've got a scenario here due to the way the licensing agreements are structured, where Microsoft has made it very attractive for enterprises to roll out Link and to take advantage of those licenses that are available. And then this results in enterprises with a whole new range of video-enabled endpoints. And the natural progression from there is to understand, well, how can they communicate with the rest of that IT environment and the rest of that video environment? So how are those new Link endpoints going to talk to mobile devices or talk to my Cisco-based room systems, for example? We find many businesses have, perhaps for many years, they've had legacy agreements in place with audio, video, or web conferencing providers. So whether that's with a global telco, whether it's with a specialist conferencing provider, often there are these parallel agreements that are providing, in some cases, similar functionalities, certainly for bridging and so on. And understanding the scope of those agreements that's in place is a very key element to understand what's really needed from a unified communications perspective. Mobile and distributed employees are a really key change agent in terms of driving a new set of requirements in the unified communication space. And we see this again and again, where businesses want those roaming mobile users to be able to participate in company-wide events and conferences and team meetings and so on, just as if they were in the office. And the fact that they're distributed thousands of miles away from the head office is often a secondary issue for them. They want to gain that same user experience across the board. And increasingly, we're seeing a need for enterprises to have employees communicate effectively with people outside of their organization. That's through joint ventures, key suppliers, key strategic clients, many different types of requirements like that based on the need to talk to these companies and people that sit outside of the organization and outside of the network. And anyone who's tried to do video calls in the past between an internal employee and an external entity means there's a lot of trial and error associated with traditional solutions in that space. And then, like many other services, we're seeing a lot of need these days for what I would call a self-service solution, where employees can take advantage of the services that they want without having to involve IT for every aspect of it. They can have a self-service portal where they can create their own meeting rooms, invite their own attendees, and so on. and perhaps even bring their own device to those types of collaborative discussions as well. So these are the starting points that we always focus on first to gain an understanding of what the requirements are. And the short answer is that we've got an integrated solution that can address all of these requirements and many more. And the key goal across all of this is to deliver a simplified multi-vendor unified communications environment. So removing the complexities and the barriers that have been traditionally associated with this space is one of the core objectives of our service. So how do we address these requirements? So we start with a technology partnership that CoEvolve has in place and has had since last year with a technology business called Acano. Acano is a European headquartered company based out of the UK and Norway with a lot of deep expertise from a technical perspective across video transcoding and all of the bridging and gatewaying functionality that's needed within a video system to be able to deliver this effectively for the enterprise. So we, after a lot of research in this space, settled on the Acano solution primarily because we felt it was a leading way of addressing these requirements that we're seeing from the enterprise in a very scalable way and also a very flexible way. We'll talk about some of the deployment models in a few moments. But essentially, the goal is to provide a platform where any different type of device, whether it's a room-based system, whether it's a phone, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a laptop, running any type of end software or end interface, so whether, again, that's Link, Skype, WebRTC browsers, mobile device operating systems, and so on, can all communicate with each other without having to make dramatic changes to those environments. So we talked earlier about the one-size-fits-all approach not being a very valid one, and that is really very true when it comes to unified communications and supporting video. Trying to afford a single codec and a single standard across many different device types and different qualities, connections, and so on is just not realistic. So having a solution in place that can accept connections from any of these types of devices, any of these types of technologies, and bring those together seamlessly into virtual meeting rooms is a key goal of our solution. And we felt that the Acano solution provided a very strong technology platform to allow us to do that. What does the solution look like? Well, there's a few key elements to this that we'll just briefly walk through now. So at the core of all of this, of course, is the video bridge that has a very broad range of support in terms of different video standards and codecs, and we'll briefly list some of those at the end. But it's providing the ability for all of these different disparate endpoints to be able to communicate effectively with each other. And a really key point around this is that it's not being done at a lowest common denominator mechanism. So the participants in one of these video calls will be able to leverage the highest quality connection that their equipment or their network can deliver. If there are participants with a lower quality camera, for example, or a lower quality network connection, they will see a lower quality stream and will send perhaps a lower quality stream as a result. But we do not bring all of the other participants down to that same level. Everyone else can be brought up to the highest level that's possible for the connections that they have and they operate. The video bridge also includes a very comprehensive set of functionality for content sharing, so high frame rate content sharing that can sit in parallel with the video streaming that is being done across these links, and a lot of ability here to integrate with varying types of video endpoints, so not just the traditional room-based systems and mobile devices, but then also integrating into Link, having presence support and so on there, and then also even what has been seen as more traditional consumer-grade systems like Skype, for example, can be fully integrated into this solution. Alongside video, getting the audio piece of the bridging functionality in place is a really key aspect of this solution, and there's a very strong audio bridging functionality here in this platform where it can be used in many cases to replace existing audio conferencing solutions. So it's a very scalable bridge that is available here for audio conferencing, for supporting connectivity from a variety of mechanisms. So the call could originate on PSTN, for example, or it could be an IP-based connection full support here for a lot of the high-definition audio codecs to really deliver a high-quality audio bridge as well. And then all of the functionality that you expect within a traditional audio bridge solution, like the IVR, customizable IVR, detailed analytics and reporting around usage of the bridge and so on. The next piece is a link gateway, and the integration with link, both from a point-to-point link call perspective and then also into link meetings, is a really key aspect of this overall solution, where we can allow users to that are based on link clients to communicate very effectively with non-link users without really any change to their workflow or to the traditional mode that they operate in. I'll show a screenshot of this, an example of this on the next slide. But this integration is getting better and better as the technology solution gets more deeply integrated with Link, and the end result is a very effective way of having all of those Link users communicate effectively with conference rooms, mobile devices, WebRTC browsers, and so on. And that browser-based functionality is the last pillar of this solution that we'll just briefly speak about now, where we can fully support the ability for users to participate fully in conferences, including content sharing and video sharing, using the newer WebRTC standards, which allow a browser-based connection with no additional plugins, very little complexity from a user interface perspective. And we see this as a very effective way, particularly of allowing external participants to join effectively in video and audio conferences, where you don't necessarily want to have the burden of supporting clients on those devices and troubleshooting them when they go wrong. If they have a modern web browser that meets the various standards for WebRTC, they can go straight to a URL in the meeting invite and participate in the call using the built-in audio and video functionality in their device. And the codecs that are supported within WebRTC are quite efficient and lightweight compared with some of the more traditional codecs that are often used in some other systems. So there can be big bandwidth efficiencies as well by going down this path. So what does this look like in practice? Two examples of this. On the left is an example of what this means for Link meeting users. So many of you will have seen the Link meeting interface in the past, where you have the video windows for each of the participants, with an escalation then up to a larger window to the speaker, and that's all configurable on the client side. This type of functionality can be carried over in an identical way when some of those participants are sitting on endpoints that are not link-based. So the ability, for example, to have some participants in a call sitting on link endpoints, some endpoints that could be a video conferencing room, some that could be a WebRTC browser. That means that you can have a very seamless expansion of the existing use of link meetings for those users. So they don't have to go learn a new interface or a new set of commands. They can invite users into a conference and into a link meeting using all of the same mechanisms that they would have previously. And from the user perspective, there's really no difference between those two. And that extends into instant messaging and content sharing as well. They can all participate fully in those conferences, even if they don't have the link client installed. On the right-hand side, you can see a very straightforward example in terms of what the user experience looks like. But if you see some of the captions here, you'll notice that behind the scenes, we're dealing with a lot of complexity. So this is a single call, 6 participants with 6 video standards. So everything from a standard H.264 video stream that might come from a telepresence room-based system, for example, 2 different standards of links, so Link 2010 and Link 2013, one that uses RTV, one that uses H.264 SVC, and then VP8 and VP9, which are codecs that are often seen in WebRTC sessions, and then one additional participant coming in over a H.265 connection, which is one of the newer video codecs that has a very, very big improvement in bandwidth efficiency, and something we'll touch on at the end of the call, but it's a codec that we're seeing a lot of interest in, primarily because of the ability to cut bandwidth usage in half, which is very important when you start dealing with multiple high-definition participants. So all these users see each other in exactly the same way. They get all the same functionality, even though they're coming in from many different room-based systems and clients and so on. but we're able to handle all of the bridging and connectivity between those standards behind the scenes to deliver that user experience in that type of a seamless way. So let's look at the deployment of this, and this is a very simplified representation of how this can look, and we touched on the flexibility at the beginning of the session when we talked about the ability to deploy our solution in a hosted, on-premise, or even a cloud-based multi-tenant environment. This, for simplicity's sake here, is shown as an on-premise deployment where you can see the two different elements of the co-evolved solutions. So there's the Acano Core appliance, which can be a physical or virtual appliance, and then the Acano Edge piece, which sits in the DMZ and faces out towards external users. So the Acano Core piece is the device that is establishing the internal SIP trunks to the various collaboration and video systems that are existing in that organization. So we have connectivity into the Link front-end server, connectivity into Cisco VCS, for example, and then connectivity into an IP PBX to allow us to be an extension of existing shortcode dialing to accept connections in the PSTN and so on. And then there's no change at all to any of the end users in this environment. So we don't require that we change the workflow for those Link clients. We don't require that we change the connectivity mechanism for people using a Cisco telepresence system, for example. That's also controlled by the VCS, and we have the back-end connections then into the Acano Core appliance to allow it to talk to everything else. On the other side, on the left-hand side in the DMZ, this is where we get involved in all of the connectivity out to the endpoints that we directly interface with. So there already are external participants in those environments that are connecting through the existing infrastructure. So Link Edge, for example, is the point that all of those external Link participants are connecting in through. There can be external room-based systems that are connecting in through VCSE in this example here, and external phone participants that are connecting in over the IP PBX in various ways. But then on our Edge appliance, we take the connections from web-based connections that are coming in, so WebRTC sessions over the public internet terminate on this device, and then also devices that are using the native client that we can deploy would also come in and connect directly into this Edge server as well. But the end result is that this environment results in that ability to create that seamless user experience for any of those different device types, and all of the physical connections here between the different devices, all of that is abstracted from the users. So all they see is the ability to connect into those conferences and rooms without having to worry about the technical device types that are situated in each of those different locations. I'll speak very briefly about the technical features and functionality. The short message here is that there is a very, very broad range of standards supported within the solution, and the reason for that is that we want to make sure that regardless of what type of device is participating in a call, we can support the video and audio standards that are existing on that device. So that includes all of the mainstream codecs that we see and use today, like the various H.264 standards, the various link standards that are out there, particularly the older ones like RTV, but then also H.264 SPC, which is seen on Link 2013, and then also brand new standards like H.265, which we're only now starting to see on some of the very new Cisco video endpoints. And we see this as a standard being something that will become more and more adopted because of those bandwidth savings that we mentioned. And we have that codec support built into the platform and has been for quite some time to be able to support those newer types of endpoints connecting into conferences. We also have, as we said, WebRTC support, which is aligned with HTML5, and that has its own set of codecs behind the scenes that are needed to support video participants using WebRTC, and all of those are fully supported by the solution. In terms of third-party device integration, obviously we connect into Link 2010 and 2013, as we've spoken about. We support full content sharing for those linked clients. And then we connect into a whole range of other voice and video endpoints, so Cisco Call Manager to connect into an existing voice infrastructure, likewise for via IP-PBXs. And then our standards compliant SIP endpoints covers a very broad range of device types that can connect into conferences. And this is really where the long list comes into play, but we have a broad range of Cisco standalone devices here, Polycom, room-based systems, life-size, and so on. All of those are supported fully within the solution through standard SIP interfaces. We also then have capabilities to communicate with some session border controllers. So again, handling inbound connections through an SBC like that. We can interface directly with the SBC, where it then handles the onward signaling back to those other device types. Audio support, again, broad range of codecs supported here, and a mix of standard definition and high definition codecs. And the list here really covers everything that's typically seen in an audio conferencing space, and the audio pieces of video conferences as well. And then from a scalability perspective, this is one of the things that we've liked about the solution from the very beginning, is that the solution can be deployed either as a physical appliance, virtual appliance, or on a multi-tenant cloud-based system, where there can be a mixing and matching of those to meet particular requirements. So if there are the high density of users in one location, that could be done with a physical appliance, but elsewhere, virtual appliance could be used with seamless connectivity between all of those. But the physical appliance, for example, can support up to 250 simultaneous high-definition calls or up to 12,000 audio calls. So you kind of have that spectrum of capacity there depending on the call type for each of those different participants. But doing all of this across a single appliance before you even have to start doubling up on those means that you've got a very highly scalable solution here that can ramp up to support even very large high-definition video conferences across a whole range of different participants. I'd like to spend just a moment explaining where this fits into our overall set of capabilities. And our interest as a business in unified communications is not so much as a standalone technology, but it's because it is a very demanding application that global enterprises need to support and need to support well. And we see a real need for a solution that has not just the basic appliance as part of the solution, but also in the context of the global network that those appliances have been deployed in. So having all of the tools and capabilities there to be able to monitor that end-to-end environment, to get alerts when the performance is degraded across that global network and is impacting the video quality, for example. Being able to layer in technologies like WAN optimization to improve the quality of the unified communications traffic that's running over the network. There are many of our other practice areas that really come into play here, where we see having those extra capabilities, so that broad area of expertise around services that sit around unified communications. We see that being a real differentiator for us, and it really speaks to our ability to be able to deliver this as an effective solution for a global enterprise. And we do this across a whole service lifecycle. So we're helping with everything from the early assessments to the ongoing management, steady state reporting, and so on, and then into more transformative optimization solutions where we're helping to migrate to a next generation solution, whether that's unified communications or the network that sits around it. We can help support all of the activities that are needed to take care of that. And we support all of this through our global co-evolved response center, where they've got those deep insights into all of these different technologies and how they depend on each other, how to interpret events that are happening across that entire environment, and so on. And to conclude, the question we'll always ask at the beginning of discussions with enterprises is, where can we help? We've got a very highly skilled team of technical and commercial experts able to understand the options that are available in the industry, help to build roadmaps and strategy development, helping to do that within the constraints of existing business cases and so on. And we can do this across as I said, a very broad spectrum of the infrastructure environment that's in place within global enterprise. So we can help with the current state assessments, we can help build roadmaps to transform a network environment to get the most out of unified communications. We can help optimize from a technical and commercial perspective the underlying environment that these really critical video and audio communications are running across. So helping to audit that environment, helping to assess the quality of the ISPs and so on that are there, MPLS providers, all of those other pieces. And then on a longer term basis, we can help make sense out of a lot of the emerging technologies that are starting to become interesting for enterprises around software-defined networking, network function virtualization, and so on, and help in a very practical way identify how they could help improve the quality of that overall environment for the global enterprise. And we are always available to trial the solution. We've got a trial platform that can be deployed at very, very short notice into an enterprise environment. And we can use that to help demonstrate from a proof of concept perspective how the solution can deliver those big improvements in productivity and user experience that we've talked about. So that's always an open invitation to our clients and prospects is to contact us at any time to get started with one of these trials. So that concludes the presentation portion of today's event. What I would like to do now is just stop to answer a few questions. We do have a few questions that have come from a number of participants on the call. And I do have Jeff Roy on the call, who is the sales engineering manager for Kano, available to help answer any technical questions that might arise as well. So the first question, and this actually could be a good one for Jeff, is we have users that are spread out across all continents, and those users need to communicate within their region as well as between regions. Can I deploy this solution in more than one data center to get the best performance for these end users? So, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind just speaking briefly to that, perhaps how the underlying technology can help in that type of an environment?
Sure. Thanks, Kieran. Thanks for letting us participate in this. There's definitely a few things that our technology can help out when you talk about distributed users. So the first way I look at it is the Kano conferencing nodes can act as a single fabric. So we can deploy either the virtual instance or an appliance of a Kano in each one of your major data centers, and they all speak to one another. That allows for some high availability as well as some resilience in the network. But more importantly, we use it for distributed conferencing. So if we have two data centers in our enterprise with Kano technology there, we can route participants in the call to their local node, or the node closest to them. And if people are joining the conference and they end up on a different node, we automatically link them together. So you can imagine a scenario where you have 20 people in one conferencing node, 30 people in another, and a Kano bridging that together with one small transcoded stream. So that is a big benefit when we look at WAN utilization, because in older technologies or legacy products in this arena, you would typically have to backhaul all connections to one node. So this is, again, a much more effective way of distributing conferences and protecting saturation and WAN links. Now, underneath it all, we can tie into the QoS, the MPLS networks, and anything else that you've already deployed and provisioned on your network, and respect those rules as well. So the conferencing backplane ties right into whatever your strategy is for your WAN or even LAN connect. Hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it was very helpful, yes. And I think from a networking perspective as well, this is something that we've got a lot of experience with in terms of the considerations around this for those types of global enterprises, because we've got that very strong functionality there at the bridging level, but then the global networks that underpin that have to be able to deliver that high performance between the regions as well, and be able to identify where bottlenecks are, where there are capacity issues, and so on. And the combination of that very strong technology functionality within the Kano solution, and then the expertise we can layer across the top in terms of getting the most out of the design and optimizing the design as needed is the end result of that is a very strong experience overall for the enterprise. We have one last question that's come up here, which I can address, which the client says, we have an audio conferencing contract that we use for internal and external calls. We mentioned an audio bridge functionality, and could this replace some of the existing usage that we have in our audio conferencing contract? And the answer to this is yes, and in many cases, in fact, we see this as an excellent introductory business case for this type of solution. So if you take that typical spend that you would have for using a telco or using a specialist conferencing provider, typically paying a per minute, per participant rate, which is often the same rate, even if all of those participants are internal, this solution allows a lot of that usage to be replaced with just network bandwidth, which is obviously far more cost effective at a unit rate, and it means that the traffic can be brought onto the internal network and bridged through the underlying Acano solution rather than sent out over the PSTN to an audio conferencing provider. So we're very familiar with building a business case around picking up some of that spend and picking up all of that spend in some cases. So internal conferencing is very straightforward, but then external conferencing can easily be achieved using zip trunks into that existing IP-PBX environment, and then the cost of getting DIDs across countries where you will have participants that need to join is typically going to be significantly less than what you would see by paying those international per minute rates from an audio conferencing provider. So that can often provide the foundation for this type of service in an environment, and then we're able to add in all of the benefits of having video across that same platform as well, but have the introduction of it funded by the savings that we can achieve from an audio conferencing perspective. So it's an environment we're very familiar with and a business case development process that we're very familiar with. So that concludes our questions and concludes our session for today. So I'd like to just close by saying thank you very much for attending our session today, and our contact details are available at the bottom of this slide. Feel free to reach out to us at any time, even if it's just a question about your existing environment, understanding whether this technology could be a good fit. And we have a team of people around the world that is always ready and willing to be able to address any of those requirements that you might have. So thank you very much, and goodbye.